And Jonathan, we're going to move into our next session. So I'm going to ask that George Hoyem come to the stage, as well as Roger Barga, who is going to give us some great insights as to the ways in which Oracle Cloud is tackling ML and AI. So thank you both for being here today. We're going to end strong today with Roger and a few other panels. We appreciate your time and commitment, and we know that traveling right now has been quite tricky. So thank you for taking the time to be with us here in Monterey. So for George and Roger, thanks for your time as well on the stage, and we'll let you have it.
Awesome.
Thank you, Christina. So I'm George Hoyem. I'm a formerly important person from In-Q-Tel, so I no longer manage the investment team there, but I am working with an early stage venture firm called Lavrock on their third $100 million fund in DC, doing early stage dual use defense first, and I'm working with a late stage AI firm called Intrepid Growth Partners, who's writing $30 to $50 million checks in late stage AI deals. So if you have any of those things going on in your portfolios, let's talk afterwards. So I'd like to welcome Roger and thank you for coming.
Absolutely.
At Oracle, Safra Katz, who is the former CEO of Oracle, was on our board, and she was kind enough to chase down Roger and get him here for us. Roger's the Senior Vice President of AI and ML for Oracle Cloud and Infrastructure, and he was responsible for providing strategy, driving executive directions on their AI infrastructure and machine learning. And prior to that, Roger was general manager of the Microsoft Azure Data Center organization. Small job, I'm sure. We'll talk about that, where he was responsible for their open source database business. And previous roles include executive roles at Amazon Web Services, overseeing businesses ranging from their machine learning, robotics, autonomous service to data streaming, et cetera. So Roger's got a lot of experience in this area. And one of the things I want to start out with, Roger, is a lot of people don't know this, but Oracle and their cloud is got some of the best reliable AI compute in the planet, and B, is at a scale that people don't really fully understand. So let's start out by just characterizing the Oracle Cloud infrastructure and some of your customers. So what's the scale you're operating at compared to some of these other characters like Microsoft or Amazon?
Yeah, the scale and the growth has been absolutely incredible. Starting with 2 gigawatt facilities, quickly ramping up to 5 gigawatt and more for the Stargate project.
And just so you, AI is now measured by electricity, right? Mm-hmm. And maybe just explain that really quick.
AI is measured in electricity that gives us flops, so we can do these floating point operations. Nowhere else in the cloud do you find floating point. All other cloud services are doing integers and characters. We're doing flops, basically powered by GPUs. And this dates all the way back to Cray computers, one of the first machines I programmed for actually doing machine learning. But the scale at which this is growing and the models that we're able to build and the capabilities that they can deliver show no sign of slowing.
So the scale, and if you had to compare yourself to Google or Amazon, are you a quarter of their compute, 50%, the same amount? How would you compare?
On par and growing, because we've had a cloud business for such a long time running SaaS applications, and that will actually, as we maybe talk later about what differentiates why we can do it so much better than other hyperscalers, dates back to we have a long experience of running cloud services SaaS applications. So we already had a very big presence. This has just been an amplifier of the AI training that we're doing today.
Great, so let's shift to kind of some of the elephant in the room questions here. First is, there's no denying that AI is changing all the day-to-day work and operations of all of our businesses. And based on what you're seeing, what does that really mean for the future of jobs, which is what all of our children are afraid of?
Yeah, there's a lot of concern about that. Let's just agree things will change. I believe it's the tasks that people carry out will change. 6 months ago, my team built and deployed an AI-powered service for our developers to use. 70,000 developers across our company. Almost all of them are using it today. And this is an area where people will say that we may be losing developers. So you would expect things might have actually changed in this space. I added a feature to that service that classifies the prompts that the individual developers were doing. Less than 20% of the time they were generating code. They were generating 25% of the time they're generating tests. Test coverage for our code bases has gone from low double digits to almost 80% test coverage. We've actually seen developers using it 20% of the time for generating documentation, for debugging. New developers use it to explain or understand a code base. We've seen no loss in productivity or no loss in developers, but we're seeing new tasks. I actually saw a spike. One group actually started using it for code development, so I'm like, what happened? Well, they had a code migration project for a legacy Oracle code base that wanted to migrate. They thought it would take months and dozens of people. 3 developers, 2 weeks, migrated that code from one old code base to another. Within my own team, I have over a dozen new projects we never thought we could do. So in many cases, the tasks that people doing are changing. People are doing more, but it doesn't necessarily, unless someone takes a reductionist attitude, result in the loss of jobs. And again, like I said, software development is where we thought might be a soft spot.
I just have to ask this: if if your kid was going into college as a software developer, would you still direct him in that direction, or would you wave him off?
My daughter is in Stanford right now in her 3rd year. She's in the AI program, and I'm encouraging her to learn how to use these tools. And we may talk later about go learn a business, go learn how a company operates, and bring these tools into that company to allow them to run smarter. So yeah, I fully support continuing to go. Things are changing. You still have to have high judgment developers thinking about how to scale, how to have fault tolerance. I don't see that going away.
Great, thank you. So shifting sort of back to the energy question, training and serving frontier scale models, these massive models measured in gigawatts, which you just expressed. How are you thinking about AI hitting sort of these energy walls? We're seeing now data centers being, denied in communities. We're seeing energy scarcity. Local people's power bills are going up because data centers are getting installed. So what does responsible scaling look like for you guys, and how are you thinking about these macro trends and how you build out your infrastructure?
Right. We can talk about energy maybe a little later and steps we're taking, because I do think we have to actually be very responsible in how we do this so it actually doesn't impact unfairly other communities. But if you look at AI scaling, especially for training, there's actually 4 resources that you have to keep a track on. Yes, there's energy. In addition to energy, there's our ability to create manufactured chips, data, and then latency as we scale out these larger and larger data centers. Of those 2, energy and CPU and capacity, chip capacity, are probably the most binding of the 2. Energy is actually more malleable of those 2. There's actually precedence that the industry is not concentrated. There's all sorts of opportunities around the country. We've seen precedent that they can continue with 3 to 5 years of planning to continue to build out energy capacity in this country with 3 to 5 years of planning. We don't see that being an issue. Chip capacity, that is a more concentrated industry, fewer players, and some real hard problems. It's a highly specialized skill set. The supply chain today is pretty tightly congested already. That's when we should probably watch more closely. Data's uncertain. We think we may be running out of what we can get out of textual data. It's unclear that multimodal data is actually going to help us with reasoning. Synthetic data might be helping us there. That's going to come at a cost and an expense. And latency, we've managed to keep innovating there and pushing that further down the road. We see no signs of things slowing, and that by 2030, we should have 2 raised to the 29th power flops available. That's a very big number. It would fill the screen behind us. But that would represent a 10,000-fold increase over the models that we're building today. That's going to happen. We don't see that. We don't see that slowing.
Wow. Against that backdrop of this energy infrastructure, we call this panel AI posture management. Yeah. And that's sort of a theme I think that you guys are passionate about and sort of your role. So what is AI posture management? What could our corporate partners in the crowd here learn from you about how you're thinking about that?
Yeah, well, just like we have to have data security posture management or cloud security posture management, every one of these new platforms actually brings more responsibility and risk. I often go into customer EBCs, executive briefings with customers, and they'll have their chief security officer there, they'll have their CTO. They're feeling fairly confident that they're on top of all this. And then you start asking them, do you know what AI tools and services your employees are using? I mean, we've heard about Anthropic and Claude and OpenAI. Do you know what data your employees are sending to these models and what their data retention policies are? How many agents are you running across your company? Do you have a registry of them? Do you know what MCP servers have been created and what security you have on top of that? And the faces, they get ashen, and they start to realize that there's actually new threat vectors that they're not considering. While they may know some of the terms, they don't have a good governance strategy in place today to reduce enterprise risk.
That's really important. It's a changing canvas. So on the business side, when we think about AI, how it rewires software development and SaaS, I don't know how many of you saw this article. It was written by Sequoia a couple weeks ago. It's saying, SaaS is the new software, or service. I think actually, excuse me, it says services is the new software. So delivering like not a software solution, but actually the results of an end service thing. So how do you think about how we're going to displace traditional apps and what's going to be in place 5 years from now that are AI enabled?
Yeah, so yes, we have heard a couple times this morning the SaaS apocalypse. When I look at the companies that have been impacted by this,
and then talk about changing costs, right?
Yeah, changing costs and business models. I mean, look, you have to ask the question, did those companies have a relative durable advantage? In many cases, no. We do not see systems of records, ERPs, CRMs, databases going away anytime soon. That has your valuable customer data. Please keep in mind, LLMs are statistical inferences and embeddings that actually learn these basically through training in something called a transformer. If you think somebody's actually going to run their financials or a forecast with an LLM and have high accuracy answers, they don't understand how this technology actually works. But what we do see is how we interact with these systems changing, putting agents in front of them, being able to have natural language conversations with them. My team has built natural language to SQL, so now anybody in my company can talk to our databases. And when things get really exciting is when we think about how can, with agents on top of all of these services, protocols like A2A and MCP allowing a single person to issue a question, and that to understand it, we have to touch 10 systems in the company, and the individual may not have to even know how to work with them, but these agents can now talk to each other, coordinate, plan, and drive end-to-end workflows. Now you can start charging for the outcomes that those drive, new business models based on outcomes, not necessarily the products themselves. And every time we see a new platform, we think about revenue we can create by bundling and unbundling, so I think that is going to create opportunities.
We'll see how those business models evolve. And some data suggests that AI-intensive firms are growing faster now. I think of, when I'm going to a legal firm, I want to pick the one that's AI forward, for example, because it's more cost effective. So these tasks are being automated. So as a CEO or an executive in one of the corporates that are here in the crowd, how should they be thinking about their teams and tooling those teams, whether it's hiring, reskilling, or reorganizing, to set them up to be one of these AI-intensive growth firms?
Yeah, this is something I've been really excited about working within Oracle to try to change how our company operates, the skill sets that we need. And again, there's people who are saying, yes, employees, with these tools, we can do more with less. There was a good interview with Jim Cramer and Jensen at the NVIDIA conference last week on this, related to this subject. And I agree with what Jensen had to say. Companies who think big are actually going to be able to do more with these tools, do more, compete more, build more product, differentiate themselves. If you think about the individual company, there's a few things there. First and foremost, your employees who understand your business, your customer, and your people are your most important asset. They can be upskilled and trained. There's been research on how you actually train a workforce. You don't bring in an advisory team from outside. You don't do a top-down mandate. People learn from somebody who's one or two levels above them. Nice thing about that, in the hierarchy of business, you have fewer of those people. Task them with understanding these tools. They have empathy for their peers below them. They understand the business. They can work with them. That is proving to be a very effective model as we try to upskill our workforce at Oracle to use these tools and become an AI-first company. There will be new roles. You need somebody who can actually design and build agents and understand how to put them on your services. You'll need to have somebody who thinks about the end-to-end flow of agents running across for your business use cases. You're going to have somebody who understands guardrails, security risks. That would be one of my first hires. And you also have to think about your company policies are probably going to get in the way, because at the speed of AI, with new models coming out every 3 months, every weeks, you have to change the pace at how your company runs on compliance, reviews. You have to move faster if you're going to be able to keep up with the startups and others.
So Roger, you've led teams at Amazon, Microsoft, Azure, and now you're at Oracle. So what's one or two important ways which Oracle is intentionally taking a different direction or a different approach that's going to let them be out front of their competitors, and maybe even compared to Google or Amazon or other players?
Yeah, so I've had a good opportunity to work at all of these hyperscalers, and it started at the beginning. Keep in mind, AWS and Azure, what was their value prop to CTOs? Is that, hey, you have machines sitting in your building, data centers, 30% utilized, bring them to us. We'll charge you less, you can let your IT teams reduce, and we'll run them at very low cost. They were doing that through virtualization and innovating on that. So you weren't getting a full machine, you were cramming multiple people onto that same machine to give them those cost savings. That's how their businesses grew. Oracle enterprise customers, they demanded performance. over non-determinism. They demanded isolation. They want to know that they're running isolated, not in a multi-tenant service like what we see at AWS and Azure. They wanted determinism. They wanted actual results. This forced Oracle to do a number of innovations. RDMA over converged Ethernet. Basically, two GPUs can talk directly to each other without anything else getting in the way. Multi-layer network, we eliminated an entire network layer for lower latency. We run everything on bare metal. We built the OCI supercomputers for actually extremely large scale training. People might think of that as a cluster. No, we're spanning multiple buildings with that supercluster. One training job running over thousands, tens of thousands of machines spanning multiple buildings. That's why OpenAI brings their workloads to us. That's why NVIDIA in customer meetings will actually say, we get 20% lower training costs, lower latency for inference. And when you're talking $500 million for a training run, that's a big deal.
Now, you mentioned OpenAI. Didn't OpenAI say they're running all their workloads on your cloud?
They are distributing their workloads. They're doing it smartly. They're also working on Azure, and they're doing some early discussions with AWS, but we'll see how that works. The lawyers might have something to say about that.
Let the competition begin.
Yeah.
So maybe we're about to wrap up here, but for the CVCs and the innovation teams in the room here, where do you see, because this whole posture management, you're seeing tools and applications that facilitate, that being implemented inside corporations. What are the best tools, security tooling, apps, throw a few out that the crowd can think about and go look at?
Yeah. First off, red teaming. Okay, you definitely have to introduce red teaming to understand your security, sandboxing, because these agents are running your business. You need to have to be able to run them in a simulated environment to actually test and make sure. I would be looking at security startups. I don't think individual enterprise companies are going to move fast enough. Startups are looking at the innovations that are coming out in security risks, and again, I'd be looking at in places like this and actually incorporating, leverage them, or investing in them.
Okay. That's it. Roger's going to be around. He's hanging you around for the afternoon.
Yes, yes.
And so if you want to hit him up and chat with him, he's not on the Brello app. I asked him, so you have to kind of find him. You know what he looks like now. So thank you for your generous time here.
Thank you, Georgia. Thank you all. Sure.